Mendoza, in the confusion, was corralled by one of the Special Forces sergeants that threw him to the ground and basically sat on him and then directed him on how to run out of the line of fire and managed to escape with his life.
It was incredible what happened. I was indignant and furious because I did not understand, and I do not today.
Several hours later, Janet called again and said there has been a real fiasco. The whole operation was a failure.
They discovered that Escobar had escaped.
Escape is not the correct word. He walked out of the prison. He controlled the guards. He controlled everything.
I think he had like 12 of his best assassins staying with him, and they all escaped that night.
The Americans associated with this mission were delighted that Pablo had escaped because while he was in prison, they hadn't been able to go after him at all. Now that he was free, it opened up the possibility of targeting him again and killing him.
We were elated because the hunt was on again, and we knew we were going to get him.
President Gaviria makes a plea to the U.S. Embassy.
Gaviria had said to me, I don't know what restrictions you've been operating under in this country up to the present time, but I'm telling you right now, we need your help. There are no restrictions.
I asked full cooperation of the U.S. in this matter. We needed to find Escobar.
He asked Ambassador Busby for a military help, and the first thing that occurred to Busby was Delta Force. He made a request to Washington to bring Delta Force to Colombia to help lead and train the Colombian forces to go after him.
We got some assets into the country. We got a lot of very, very competent people that came to Colombia literally within hours.
All kinds of groups were there. The unit, the agency, Central Spike, all to provide support for the Colombian command.
I always believed that we had a very, very good shot at finding Escobar in the early going. He was the crown jewel. He is what we wanted.
Delta Force places 2 operators at La Catedral. While Central Spike would put their ears on the target, Delta Force would put their eyes on it.
Central Spike and Delta Force were able to pinpoint Escobar's location literally days after he'd escaped from prison.
By the time the Colombian forces act on the American intelligence, Pablo has vanished.
In order to be successful with Pablo, it had to be very time sensitive, because if we got intelligence that Pablo Escobar was at location X last night, chances are he wasn't there anymore.
As Escobar's trail grows cold, a decision is made to reform the original search block. This time, it will have the full support of the United States law enforcement, intelligence, and counterterrorism agencies.
Peña and Murphy went to live in Medellin with the task force. I mean, that was their second home.
This search block was now more organized, had more of a focus, had more intelligence, had better equipment to start the second search for Escobar.
With corruption and fear permeating the Colombian forces, there is one clear choice for commander of the new search block.
I did not ask to be reassigned to head the operations. But when he escaped from La Catedral, my immediate thought was, this represents an opportunity to finish the job.
He was one of the few Colombian police officers that was not afraid of Pablo Escobar, and he was completely obsessed with getting Pablo.
So a decision was made to bring Colonel Martinez back. They spent the latter part of 1992 basically training Martinez and his men to be more effective, basically to be a proxy Delta Force in this effort to get Escobar.
The search block immediately begins launching daring raids throughout Medellin.
It was very stressful. I mean, it's one of the most stressful, I guess, dangerous points in my life. You got to remember that we were going after probably one of the world's most dangerous persons.
Through his lawyers and the press, Escobar desperately tries to reclaim his deal with the government. But this time, there will be no deal.
We all the time say, he can only give up. We will not guarantee him anything
And it was very clear to everyone involved that the intention was no longer to arrest Pablo, to bring him to justice or put him in prison. At this point, they were just looking for him to kill him.
(1992). Despite the full cooperation of the American forces in the hunt for Pablo Escobar, the drug boss remains at large and protected by his powerful Medellin cartel.
Escobar was the head of a very large criminal organization, so he employed not just gunmen and hitmen and criminals, but also bankers and lawyers and accountants.
He had an infrastructure in Medellin, so we started targeting other members of his organization.
We began to systematically cut away all of his support mechanisms, all of his infrastructure. We built up a large body of intelligence, put together organization charts down to the lowest lieutenant in his organization.
Escobar responds by putting a price tag on the head of Medellin police officers.
He was killing regular police officers, nothing to do with the search block, just a regular police officer on the beat.
Every day there were funerals for policemen that were killed the night before.
Pablo was able always to stay one step ahead of the search block because he had a lot of friends and informants, both in the community and also within the search block itself.
There was a lot of information that was being intercepted, which suggested a lot of people on the take. If you didn't take the money, he would shoot you. Plata or plomo. You want a bullet or you want some money.
We knew that we could be infiltrated. The Medellin cartel members were constantly looking for someone they could bribe monetarily.
It became apparent to the Americans and to the Colombians searching for Escobar that the tactics they were using were never going to be successful.
In the days after Escobar's escape from his private prison in July of 1992, the DEA had toured the site in search of any intelligence that they could possibly use against the drug lord.
We went through the prison where he had lived, found great intelligence, just great information.
One of the things that they noticed about Escobar as they examined his living quarters and his memorabilia was how much his life revolved around his family and his children.
I was always of the opinion that we should watch his family, track his family, because he had the reputation of being an absolutely ruthless, murderous man, but the man who really had great regard for his family, for his wife and his two children.
Ambassador Busby shared his thoughts with the Colombian authorities.
I talked to the Colombians about that and said, I think this will make him uneasy and perhaps have him stick his head up and we'll be able to see him.
January 30th, 1993. A 220-pound car bomb explodes in front of a bookstore in downtown Medellin.
It killed scores of people, many of them children shopping for school supplies. And I think it was really the point at which the gloves came off in the search for Pablo Escobar.
In the subsequent days, more bombs go off in Colombia. This time, however, the bombs are targeting Pablo's family. A bomb blows up a 12-story apartment building owned by Pablo's mother. Soon, another Escobar house is decimated.
An organization calling itself Los Pepes came out of the woodwork.
A mysterious entity begins targeting Pablo's organization and even his family for outright assassination.
Los Pepes, which stood for, in its acronym, People Persecuted by Pablo Escobar, suddenly burst on the scene, targeting and assassinating anyone who was associated with Escobar.
It had the earmarks of a psychological operation of some sort. But it got very quickly beyond that, and it became a murderous bloodbath. People being killed by the Pepes almost every night.
They ran the whole gamut of crimes. So, in reality, Los Pepes were just as ruthless as Escobar.
Anybody who had any connection with Escobar was either killed, arrested, or running for their lives.
Personally,